She started with a laptop on a thrift store floor, photographing vintage clothes on a budget. Today, her name is stamped on a book that became a cultural signal, a brand that hit 9 figures in sales, and a movement that outlived a company. But the path was not what anyone expected. Sophia Amoruso grew up in California. She was born in 1984 in San Diego, and raised in a modest environment. She moved around the state, found traditional school a tough fit, and learned to figure things out on her own. There was no trust fund. No insider advantage. What she had was curiosity, a camera, and time. By her late teens and early 20s, she held a string of small jobs. She checked student IDs at an art school in San Francisco. She frequented thrift stores. She paid attention to how clothes felt in the hand, and how styles moved in and out of relevance online. She began to see something others missed. Vintage was not just old clothing. It was a story that could be told better. Listings on early marketplaces were flat and dull. Photos were bad. Descriptions were worse. Buyers had to imagine everything. She asked a simple question. What if the listing did the imagining for them? In 2006 she opened an eBay store called Nasty Gal Vintage. The proposition was simple. Curate the best pieces. Style them intentionally. Shoot them in a way that helped a buyer see themselves wearing them. Write descriptions with personality. Price them fairly. Ship fast. Use social media to show the pieces, not just the sale. The store caught attention. She posted on MySpace. She watched comments. She listened to messages. The early customers did not just buy clothes. They subscribed to a feeling. Orders picked up. A pattern emerged. The bestsellers were not just rare. They were presented in a way that made him feel current. She leaned into that. Each listing felt like a mini editorial. The approach was unusual for eBay at the time. Many sellers optimized for volume. She optimized for taste and storytelling. Inventory turned quickly. Cash cycled back into better finds. The flywheel began to spin. But early success brings early friction. After rapid growth on eBay, her store was suspended. The reasons were procedural, and the outcome was the same. The channel was gone overnight. At that moment, the decision point appeared. Stop and start over somewhere else, or build something that could not be taken away as easily. She chose to build. She launched her own site. Nasty Gal was no longer a username. It was a brand. The move changed everything, but not instantly. Traffic had to be rebuilt. Customers had to be earned. The team was tiny. Every dollar had to work. But control over the experience paid off. She owned the customer relationship. She could design the shop the way she wanted. She could market in her voice. The bet started to work. According to Inc., Nasty Gal hit more than $100 million in revenue within a few years, growing from an eBay store to a direct-to-consumer brand with hundreds of employees. That report in 2013 captured the magnitude of the curve. The playbook was still scrappy. New arrivals were curated daily. Photos were clean. The copy was sharp. The community felt like an insider club. Press noticed. Investors noticed. She raised outside capital. According to TechCrunch, Nasty Gal raised $9 million from Index Ventures in 2012, then $40 million in 2013, bringing total funding to $49 million. Index partner Danny Ryan joined the board. The money went toward infrastructure, talent, and growth. The brand opened a fulfillment center. The site scaled. Product expanded beyond vintage into original designs that matched the aesthetic customers wanted. Why did this work when so many online boutiques stalled out? There was a contrarian insight hidden in plain sight. In a social era, brand voice is a moat. Customers are not just buying a product. They are buying membership in a world. Nasty Gal felt like a world. The listings were not ads. They were micro-magazines. The social posts were not billboards. They were invitations. That intimacy creates repeat purchase behavior that looks like magic to competitors who are only chasing keywords. Early wins reinforce the system. Drop a collection. Sell through the best items in hours. Measure what hits. Learn fast. Reinvest profits into the next collection and into operations. The cycle was aggressive, but it worked. The company hired fast to keep up. It launched new categories. It teased collaborations. It moved from a small warehouse to bigger space. The press wrote profiles that framed the company as a rocket. According to Forbes coverage from 2016, Nasty Gal's rise placed Sophia among the notable self-made founders of that moment. The validation was real, and so was the pressure that always follows. But that is not the full picture. Hypergrowth hides operational debt. Fast fashion competitors moved even faster. Logistics complexity spiked. Building proprietary product is different from reselling vintage. Forecasting became harder. Culture had to evolve from a handful of generalists to a coordinated company. Mistakes got more expensive. The founder had to shift from creative-led to executive leader. That shift is brutal in real time. In 2015, a leadership change arrived. As reported by Recode, Sophia stepped down as CEO and became executive chairwoman. A seasoned retail executive stepped in to run operations. On paper, this was the right move for scale. In practice, the headwinds were already strong. The company faced high costs, intense competition, and internal strain. Then the worst case showed up. In 2016, Nasty Gal filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. According to the New York Times, the filing capped a period of layoffs, leadership changes, and mounting obligations. The stakes were as high as they get in business. The brand that went from 0 to 9 figures looked like it might disappear. Everything built over a decade was at risk. The next decisions were complex. Protect the brand. Protect the customers. Protect the people who could be protected. In a bankruptcy, assets can be sold to maximize recovery. Interest emerged. According to Reuters and the BBC, UK-based retailer Boohoo agreed to acquire Nasty Gal's intellectual property for about $20 million in early 2017. The brand would live on under new ownership. The original company did not. For a founder, that is both a relief and a reckoning. What happened next surprised many observers. Most founders faced with a collapse retreat from public life. Sophia did not disappear. She published a book in 2014 titled Girl Boss. It became a New York Times bestseller. It also became a shorthand for scrappy female leadership in the social era. In 2017, Netflix released a series inspired by the book, as reported by Variety. The story, dramatized for television, amplified her profile far beyond fashion. This was a different kind of leverage. It was not a warehouse or a storefront. It was a narrative. With a platform and a community, a new chapter began. Girl Boss Media launched in 2017. The mission was to provide content, events, and resources for ambitious women. Conferences gathered thousands, and digital products converted attention into revenue. The brand produced articles, podcasts, and newsletters. Sponsors came to the table. For a time, the pivot worked. It took skills honed in retail and redeployed them in media. Build a world. Invite people in. Give them reasons to return. But building media is also hard. The playbooks of the late 2010s kept changing, and the cultural moment around the term girl boss evolved. In 2020, amid a broader reckoning across many companies, Sophia stepped down as CEO of Girl Boss Media, as reported by Business Insider. She remained a public figure, but she handed off day-to-day leadership. The move created the space for a third act. That third act combined experience into a single product. In late 2020, she launched Business Class, an online course for entrepreneurs. It packaged lessons from brand building, e-commerce, community, and personal reinvention into a curriculum. It also leaned into cohort-based learning, accountability, and templates. Early students shared wins. The program became a core business, and the founder became an operator again, this time with leverage that does not require massive inventory or fixed retail costs. Alongside Business Class, she began angel investing, advising founders, and turning her social platforms into distribution. She wrote a second book, The Girl Boss Workbook, in 2017. She continued to appear at conferences, mentor founders, and speak about product market fit and personal resilience. The empire looked different, but it was still an empire. It was built on intellectual property, audience, and education, with a brand that survived the bankruptcy of its first vehicle. Here is the strategic spine underneath the story. The original breakthrough was not a secret warehouse source. It was packaging and positioning. The second breakthrough was not a lucky TV deal. It was recognizing that narrative is an asset class. The third breakthrough was not a course trend. It was a shift to high gross margin digital products with direct customer relationships and low operational risk compared to physical retail. Each move compounded the last. Each failure taught the next move. Why does this matter to anyone building now? Because the business landscape keeps rewarding the same underlying skills. Find an underserved customer. Build a world they want to belong to. Own the channel where they gather. Monetize with products that match their pain and their wallet. Protect your downside with models that do not require huge fixed costs unless the upside justifies them. When those rules are honored, growth becomes less fragile. But that is not the end of the analysis. There are guardrails that come from the nasty gal years. Fast growth can outpace systems. Capital amplifies both strength and weakness. Hiring changes a culture. Unit economics do not forgive optimism. External validation can hide internal fragility. The lesson is not to avoid growth. The lesson is to master it. Sophisticated operators build forecasting muscle early. They invest in operations before marketing blows up the funnel. They test new product lines in small batches. They make talent decisions fast. They keep a clean cap table and a sharp budget. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the personal brand piece keeps doing its work. A founder with a clear voice can re-enter the market after a setback. Audiences care about honesty and value. They do not care if a previous venture failed, if the new one solves their problem. The Girl Boss book, and the conversations that followed, created a durable halo. According to the New York Times list, it was a bestseller, which placed it in front of millions of readers. That reach generated opportunities that a private comeback would never create. Consider the compounding effect across acts. In Act 1, she learned demand creation and product curation. In Act 2, she learned fundraising, scaling, and the cost of complexity. In Act 3, she learned crisis leadership and asset disposition. In Act 4, she learned media and community economics. In Act 5, she is applying all of it to education and investing. This is not a straight line. It is a loop that accelerates with each pass. But here is what most people miss: the brand that failed financially still won culturally. Nasty Gal as a corporate entity ended. Nasty Gal as a story did not. Boohoo continues to run the brand. The founder used the legacy to fuel a new platform. Failure and legacy can coexist, and a skilled operator can turn the tension into leverage. That is an important idea for builders who fear that one wrong move ends the game. The game only ends if you stop playing. There is another pattern worth noting. The first business was inventory heavy. The second was attention heavy. The third is knowledge heavy. Each step reduces operational burden while increasing control. Inventory ties up cash. Attention requires cadence. Knowledge scales with lower marginal cost. This is not a formula to copy blindly. It is a framework to think with. Ask what your leverage is today, and how to convert it into a form that survives shocks. Now, look at the tactical moves that made the earliest sales happen. She used crisp photography long before it was common on marketplaces. She wrote descriptions that felt like a friend, not a catalog. She responded to customers in real time. She learned from returns. She tracked what sold by cut, fabric, and fit. She expanded into private label only after the audience was primed. The order was key. Audience first. Product second. Paid marketing last. Many brands invert that order and burn cash. On the culture side, the lesson is about story coherence. A brand that speaks in one voice across product, marketing, and service earns trust. A brand that shape-shifts to chase trends loses it. During Nasty Gal's rise, the voice was clear. Girly, edgy, independent, and playful. That voice held the customer even when competitors tried to undercut pricing. Voice and values do not show up on a balance sheet. They show up in repeat purchase rates and lifetime value. Operationally, there are lessons from the hard parts. Choose systems that can handle an order spike. Invest in planning and allocation for new product lines. Hire leaders who have scaled the exact function you need. Set up a dashboard that tells the truth. Make room for training and process. Growth always looks like a creative carnival from the outside. Inside, it is a spreadsheet and a schedule. The entrepreneurs who respect both sides make it to the next level. Risk management is part of the real story too. A company can be a hit and still run out of cash. Big leases and high payrolls are commitments that do not flex. Inventory risk is real. Returns can sink gross margins. Payment processing freezes can cut off oxygen. A founder must keep a plan B for each risk category. Vendors need regular communication. Bankers need updates. Investors need clarity. Customers need transparency when things shift. The personal arc carries its own blueprint. Reinvention is a skill. It requires owning the narrative. According to public interviews and profiles, Sophia faced public criticism in tough moments. The response was consistent. Acknowledge what happened. Learn in public. Build the next thing. The market rewards founders who do not pretend. The market punishes founders who hide. What does this all add up to in measurable terms? A company that hit 9 figures in revenue, per sale of brand assets to a global retailer for $20 million, per BBC and Reuters. A best-selling book that reached mass culture, per the New York Times. A Netflix series that expanded reach worldwide, per Variety. A media platform that convened a community. A modern education business that converts experience into playbooks. The empire is not a single entity on a single cap table. The empire is a portfolio of influence, products, and relationships. For anyone watching, here are the takeaways that matter today. First, the direct line to your customer is everything. Build email. Build SMS. Build a community space you own. Second, make the product speak for itself. Photography, copy, and packaging are not extras. They are levers. Third, scale slower than your ego wants, and faster than your fear allows. The path is in between, run by numbers and led by taste. Fourth, monetize your knowledge as soon as you have a pattern. Courses, playbooks, and workshops are not side hustles. They are leverage. Fifth, when a chapter ends, write the next chapter fast. Momentum is a form of currency. Can this work now in a world of TikTok, AI, and real-time retail? Yes, but with updates. Use short video to create desire. Use AI tools to plan inventory and forecast demand. Use live shopping to convert. Use micro-communities for retention. The core never changes. Understand your customer better than anyone else. Speak to them in a voice they love. Build products that make them feel understood. Then, keep your operations so clean that growth does not break you. There is a final insight in this story. Titles and valuations come and go. What endures is the ability to create demand and deliver delight. Sophia Amoruso built that ability in the quiet hours of a tiny online store. She scaled it through hype and heat. She rebuilt it after a public fall. That is the work. That is the empire. Not a single entity, but a repeatable way of turning attention into value. From a vintage listing on eBay to a 9-figure brand, to a best-selling book and a media platform, to a modern education business, this is how a founder can build, lose, and build again. It is not luck. It is not privilege. It is skill, pattern recognition, and the courage to continue. If you enjoyed learning about this empire builder's journey and you're interested in building your own empire, there's something you need to know. This person and 78% of the Forbes 400 use a specific strategy to build massive businesses and multiply their wealth systematically. But here's what most people miss: there is a pattern. A strategy hiding in plain sight. The Forbes 400 know it. They exploit it. They have built fortunes with it. And it has been hidden from mainstream business education for decades. First link in the description reveals what the titans of industry do not talk about publicly. Watch it next. 10 minutes that could change everything.